All right, so I'm sure no one is surprised by today's long-awaited acknowledgement by the government of the United States of America of my innocence. Even the Australian government has admitted that I had committed no crime. It's just unfortunate that because of politics, I was subjected to 5.5 years of physical and psychological torture that I will now live with always. I then had to sit in the Adelaide jail until the 2007 elections were concluded. I was then subjected to a gag order, then a control order, and I even had my bank accounts frozen. There are a lot of people who have been instrumental in my release from Guantanamo and today's final outcome. But I'd like to give special mention to Stephen Kenny of Kamata Lempens. He was there at the beginning and he is still here now today at the end, successful after many years of toil. Also special thanks to Gilbert and Tobin for their assistance in defeating the Australian government's attempt to seize the proceeds from the sale of my book. I would also like to thank Wells Dixon and the team at the Centre for Constitutional Rights in New York and Joe Margulies for the work on my appeal. I also wish to thank the members of the Australian public who have recognised that my conviction was as a result of political interference and who have supported me over the years. I'm looking forward to getting on with my life now that my name has been cleared. Thank you.
How did you hear the news and what was your reaction when you first heard it, David?
4 o'clock this morning from Stephen Kenny.
And what did you say? What did you do?
I was still half asleep. So.
And when you woke up and you realised?
Well, we've been waiting for this decision, not just at the moment, but for years. So it's a relief because it's over. And hopefully today is the last time that we'll have to convene like this.
There's been a lot of talk about an apology from the federal government. Do you think you're now owed one?
I don't really care, to be honest. It's all over with.
The government said it's not in the business of apologising. What do you
No,
make
they're
of
not.
that?
It doesn't surprise me.
Will you be seeking compensation?
Not at this point, no. But I do think, however, that someone should be responsible for my medical expenses. I'm in a lot of trouble at the moment physically. It's even affecting my ability to do my day job, which is my only income. So I'm in need of operation on my left knee, my right elbow, my back. My teeth keep getting pulled because I couldn't brush them for 5.5 years. So it's becoming a very expensive exercise to fix myself from the years of torture.
Tell us a little bit more about that, David.
You might take legal action to seek compensation.
No, there's no. We haven't even discussed it at this point. So but I'm just talking about someone should be responsible for my medical expenses from my time in Guantanamo. Well, the Australian government, they were aware of the conditions I was being held in at the time. I think they should at least pay my medical expenses. That's not much to ask for, I don't think.
How did your time in Guantanamo contribute to those injuries that you're having treated now? You mentioned the teeth. What about some of the other things you mentioned?
Well, your knee, for example.
Well, it's due to the torture. It's been kept in metal rooms in freezing conditions for years. It's not being able to move. It's not being able to exercise. The body deteriorates over 5.5 years, even without the added torture, such as stress positions, being beaten, etc.
You got that call this morning?
Just move
Step forward a little bit, David.
So,
How did you feel when you got that phone call this morning? I know you were expecting it, but nevertheless, was it comfortable?
relieved, I suppose. Also exhausted because it's been a long time.
Is there a lot of anger there as well, David?
No, there's not anger. I think I'm too defeated to have any anger, so I'm just worn out.
People who still criticise your actions point out that there was nothing in this judgment that said you weren't in Afghanistan fighting with jihadi forces who were in turn fighting against the West. What would you say to that?
Well, perhaps I can answer that one for you, David. We discussed that earlier. And the real position and the real issue today is not what David Hicks was doing in Guantanamo Bay, in Afghanistan, but rather how the Australian government treated him once he was captured in those circumstances. The issue is, how do we want Australian citizens treated when they are captured in what is effectively a combat zone? Do we want them taken beyond the law, locked in cages, held in solitary confinement, away from any judicial review, any opportunity to meet or have contact with their families. I mean, that's the real issue about what happened to David Hicks, not what he was doing in Afghanistan. What he was doing there was not at that time illegal. He wasn't doing anything that was a breach of Australian, international or US law. And that's what this decision today confirms. The Australian government have known all along and have said right at the very beginning that David Hicks had committed no offence and he could not be tried in Australia. That's right. They knew that. They knew what the international law was, and yet they still pressured the United States to charge David with something rather than sending him home.
But are you saying, Stephen, if we get a step forward tonight, are you saying that this is actually a declaration of innocence, or is it a case of convictions being quashed or technicalities?
It's a declaration of innocence. David pled guilty to a charge of aiding the enemy. That crime does not exist. It is not a crime to aid the enemy in international law, Australian law or United States law. That's what this decision and earlier decisions of the United States courts have said. So it is a declaration of David's innocence. It's not a technicality.
How people would look at that, Stephen, and say, well, he's guilty of those crimes.
No.
They weren't law. They're guilty of those events, those involvements, and his activities over there.
David went to Afghanistan, yes. David was doing military training over there, yes. He was not doing it for the Australian Army or the Australian government. But it was not a crime. So it's not that he did a crime. There was no crime, and that's what this decision is about. The fact that there is no crime that David Hicks has committed.
Mr. Hicks, could we get you to answer a few more questions? Is that okay? I mean, what do you say? What do you say? Yeah, but we want to know, what do you say to your critics?
Yes, I think it's a big issue. Can you have to speak about that?
Hold on, David, if you're going to talk, come up the front here.
I think they're supporters of torture.
David, you can't get
Who? Sorry?
The critics. But you see what we're saying here. A lot of people are confused that you admit to involvement in those activities over there that legally, technically at the time weren't criminal.
I don't, and the only thing that matters is what the US government has said.
Yeah.
So obviously you don't agree with the US government's decision.
Well, can you tell us just for...
You'll never be happy.
What were you doing when you were caught in Afghanistan?
Having a holiday.
Well, that's not true, is it?
Done. Done. That shoes are very painful. 4 toes.